Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we have an amazing guest, Jasmin Bhalodia, and I'm so excited to bring her to you today with her story. Jasmin, thank you so much for sharing.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
Welcome. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started and hop right into your amazing journey, your amazing story. And why don't you share with us, first of all, how did you discover the world of clinical research? How did you get into it?
Oh, gosh. I have always been a fan of the pharma industry. Ever since I was a teenager, I lived in New Jersey, which many people will say is the heart of pharma in some respects. Of course, since that time, a lot of places have expanded. But I always told myself that when I sort of grow up, I want to be working in one of these companies. So as a result, I pursued a bachelor's degree in pharmaceutical science at Campbell University. So shout out to Campbell University. And I knew that as I graduated from my bachelor's, there was a new program coming through, a master's in clinical research. And at the time, it was a hot field, new area, and I just wanted to tap into it. So I actually learned through my education route.
Oh, nice. Nice. And what was your educational background?
So I got my bachelor's in pharmaceutical research and I got my master's in clinical research at Campbell University.
Nice. And so was this something that I know you said you kind of discovered it throughout college, but going from high school to college, was this something that you had in mind, or was it a completely new foreign concept once you entered into college?
Clinical research was a new area for me specifically. However, the pharma industry wasn't. I was always driving by these companies and always heard such wonderful things about them. And I really just eventually wanted a career in pharma. And so clinical research being sort of a subset of the pharma world, it's just very much predictable and very focused into where I wanted to be.
Right. And I have a similar experience. Like, I was aware of the pharma industry, but not necessarily clinical research and that whole piece.
Right. Once you get into it, you learn a bit more, but you may not know as many, right? I think that in the past year, given COVID, I think clinical trials in general has become a lot more popular and sort of the very focus of conversation nowadays.
So true. And so, once you got into the industry, what took you to the CRA role specifically?
Yes. So I was interested in somehow entering the clinical research field. And the one way was, of course, pursuing my master's. So I was pursuing a master's degree full time and also working full time. And I was actually a co-op in the labs. And so during this time, there was an opportunity to become an intern for a CRO. So I was able to have an internship at a CRO and start off as an intern CRA. And that, shortly thereafter, I sort of dived into the CRA role to pursue the CRA career.
Oh, nice. So it was a really nice segue, because you know how hard it is for people to get any sort of opportunity. So it almost seemed like it flowed kind of naturally for you, right?
Well, I would say that you have to seek it. It's not just going to, present itself. You have to make those connects and the networks. You have to tap into, whether it be your network through the educational route and through your school and your colleagues and friends through that, or just in terms of folks from the industry in general. And as you're in the co-op or whatever role you're in, you're reaching out and you say, okay, I heard about this. What is this? And reach out and talk to someone. Just get to know someone. Everyone's always been very open and very willing to share their knowledge with you. And so I would say that definitely stay curious. And that's sort of where I have been, is staying curious and learning that there was an opportunity in the CRO they knew about this new program. I sort of highlighted the opportunity for the program and sort of merging an opportunity to merge the program, the internship, as well as the opportunity to learn live into a role.
Nice. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because so many people think that, I don't know if it's because they feel like they have the education or the years of experience or whatever it is, but they just feel like almost like they're entitled to the role. So they don't feel like they should have to necessarily take those extra steps that you mentioned that you took.
Yes. Every role that you take in your career, I have definitely had to find a way, create the channel, make the network, work towards applying to X number of positions. It's putting in the work to get the output, and not, always stay motivated. Never let it become disheartening in any way, because the right time, the right opportunity will present itself. And being creative, finding a way. I again, like I said, it's not that there was an opportunity available, but if there's a way that someone working in the CRO industry, can you have them connect you with someone within the company that can speak to you about an opportunity to develop some type of a program, allow you to come in? You can have paid internships, you can have unpaid internships. It's all possible. It's just a matter of speaking about it and learning about it and creating the opportunity.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And one thing I did want to go back and touch on was your graduate degree. So a lot of people, they come to me and they say, is it necessary to get an advanced level degree? Do I recommend it? What are your thoughts as to how your degree has impacted your career?
Oh, it definitely has helped. To get a focused, concentrated degree in clinical research, you're essentially learning the industry and the fundamentals about clinical research, including CRA. Do you need the master's to get into the CRA role? No, I do not think so. But I do think if able, a bachelor's degree certainly does help towards that CRA role. As well, there are companies like CROs that have these very robust foundational CRA training programs that you can take that really covers a lot of the fundamentals of a CRA role. So I would say that if you can pursue something dedicated and focused and demonstrate that you're interested in the clinical research space, like a bachelor's or a master's degree, absolutely, but it's not needed.
I agree with that as well. I have my master's in pharmacology. So a lot of times when I tell people this, they're like, but you have your master's.
It seems like you need it, but you actually really don't. And I think that it's about finding the right space environment. There's different industries that you can get into that actually has a sort of a door opening to clinical research.
Right. I agree totally. So once you landed your first CRA role, what are some of the challenges that you faced? Was it everything you thought it would be? Was it a complete total shocker? Like, what was share with us the learning curve, so to speak, that you had to go through?
So I didn't realize I would be in an airport as much as I was. So the travel was pretty high. I would say that the demand of finding balance. I didn't realize that along with the travel, you are going to have to carve out time to keep up with your reports and getting them completed and submitted, and not to sort of fall back on those, because that really will keep you ahead of the curve because of how much you are on the road. And when you do come back, you want to take some time and rest. You want to, you have to take time for yourself, and you have a short amount of time before you hit the road again.
And qualify, the travel time. A lot of people, they hear it and then they see it on those job descriptions, right? 60 to 80%. But what did that look like in terms of travel days per week, per month? What qualify that for us?
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends. It depends where you're going. It depends on the studies that you're monitoring, the frequency in which you need to be there, the complexity of your trials to know how long you need to stay on site to sort of do your data review and monitoring. But I would say, it could be anywhere from, traveling out on a Monday morning, potentially hitting a site that afternoon, staying the night and being able to finish out your full Tuesday. And if you're able to get that flight out on Tuesday night, yes, great. If you need to potentially fly out on a Wednesday morning to get to your next site, that could also be the case. Just again, it depends on how long you're staying at each location. To anywhere from, you can have regionally assigned sites. And so I remember having 3 sites around the New Orleans area. And so what I would do is I would try to schedule them in a sort of in and around the same time or same week. So I end up not moving around so much, but also just staying there for the X amount of time. So for a full week rather than just going airport to airport. So where you can have an opportunity to cluster, that really certainly helps stabilize your schedule.
Absolutely. And what would you say would be your craziest week where you travel to the most cities or the most states, had the most flights? Like, what would be your craziest week?
Craziest week or maybe craziest story?
Either one.
Yeah, I would say I was monitoring the Southeast region, and I had a site that I needed to get to from Raleigh to Asheville, North Carolina in the winter during a snowstorm. And the flight and the plane was certainly it was a small plane. So the experience of the flight in itself was very challenging, to say the least. But then also, once we got there, was able to do the monitoring, but then rented a car and drove through to Tennessee to be able to do another monitoring, because weather-wise, it wasn't working out in terms of flying, and it was actually easier to do a drive. So I actually ended up doing a 3-4 hour drive to Tennessee. So, most of the week was either between driving a lot to flying through a storm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And a lot of people, they don't think about the driving. They always think when they hear travel, they automatically assume these flights. They think about the glamour and the glitz side. And it's like, oh, I love to travel. I want to, I want to be a CRA so I can travel. But they don't think about the drives that a lot of times we have to do, right?
Yes, and the logistics are pretty complex. Usually, any role I say that requires travel, yes, it does sound glamorous, but there's a lot of work put into it.
Yes.
And it definitely takes a certain type of person and energy and commitment to stick with it and stay with it.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I hate driving like past 2 hours. I would say maybe 2.5 hours I would give myself, but past that, I hate it. I hate it.
I will tell you that I am okay with the travel. I find it to be relaxing and sometimes intentional in why I do that, simply because sometimes you're just on and it gives you a new scenery. And especially if you're in a different region, you can utilize your drive as a way to sort of enjoy the scenic route, so to speak. So I kind of incorporate that into your work.
That is true. And those times are, now that you say that, those are the times where I found peace during the drive. You're right. Because there was a time where it was in South Carolina and a hurricane was coming. And I was not able to, it was Charleston. I wasn't able to get a flight out, but they were like evacuating the whole city. So I had to drive home and, with everybody leaving, that added extra hours just because of the traffic. So it took me, I think it would have traditionally been like maybe a 3.5, 4 hour drive, and it turned into like 6 or 7. But you're right. Those are the times where you do, you get to take the scenic route and kind of slow down a little bit.
The best of the situation. Yep.
Right. You're right. And that's part of being a CRA, right? You have to take the good with the bad and kind of find the good, or else you just get lost.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And all the stuff you have to keep up with, right?
Yes. A lot of balance, a lot of just time management is key. 100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. So of course, you got your first CRA role. Now you're monitoring, you're gaining your experience. Now what? Tell us a little bit more about, kind of once you became a monitor, when you sort of fell into your groove, how long did it take to get acclimated? And then when did you start thinking about next steps beyond monitoring?
Yeah, so I would say I was in my CRA interning for about 6 months, and then I transitioned into sort of the CRA role. I was probably in the CRA role for another year or so. For me, in terms of my career, CRA was the gates. It was a foundational learning. It was a foundational aspect to clinical research that I absolutely wanted to take on and needed to understand. I had my eye on sight for trial management and eventually evolving my career from the CRA into trial managing. So it was to get enough experience, enough to understand what this means, and then take the next step and leap into trial managing.
Nice. So again, you had a plan. There was a
Yes.
strategy, there was a plan, you followed the plan, you executed the plan.
Yes.
Which a lot of people think you can just kind of apply and poof, I have a master's degree, so why not choose me? But you
Yes.
need a plan. That's what I'm getting from you. You had a plan, a strategy, you followed, you executed those plans and strategies.
Yeah, always think ahead, enough to understand that directionally you have purpose, right? And so as long as you know that at some point this is where I want to go, then you will make decisions, you will take action, you will learn things along the way that will help you steer you towards that direction.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And that's really what I try to focus on with all of my coaching clients. They come to me and they think it's just kind of like old school where you just apply and then they call you and then you have a job. And then, once you get a job, you magically create and build this wonderful career. And it's not like that at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so glad you pointed that out and mentioned that. And so as a CRA, was there a specific therapeutic area that you tried to focus on, or specific, opportunities or mentors or things that you did throughout that process to the trial lead, in order to get you from, the gateway, so to speak, into where your more long-term goals were?
Yeah, so at the time, I wanted to be part of the exciting program, right? And so there was sort of a very big program that the CRO was partnered with a sponsor with. It was in the respiratory space. And the opportunity was presenting itself where the program's coming in, opportunities are expanding. They need folks to support this large program. And so for me, being new to the industry, I am not going to be very picky. I'm going to take up the opportunity where I see and able. So I was hungry, and I was able to take whatever opportunity came forth. And it was in the respiratory space, but I knew that there was a lot of therapeutic areas out there. The question was, when would I be able to sort of transition? And with this program launching, you want to also have the opportunity to stick with it, find a way to settle in. And so I settled in enough before I was able to make a transition. And it wasn't, it was the role that made the transition, not the therapeutic area transition within the role.
Nice. So again, it's like the same reoccurring theme. Like you had a plan.
Yes.
You had a very specific plan, right?
Yes.
Going into it. And that's so amazing though, that you knew going in that, this is not where you wanted to stay. It was kind of like, the foot in the door, so to speak.
Yes. I would say for anyone entering the field, your vision, the immediate vision is the role itself that you're trying to acquire, right? And so where is that role? Where does it fit? It fits in the clinical research domain within pharma industry. So let me learn a lot about this entire space and where clinical research sort of has its mark, right? And so when you think about it, then you think about your options. Then you think about what direction can you take? Where can you apply for positions? Who can you reach out to? Leverage your LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really great in terms of finding, folks that are in various industries, companies. They have their connects. You'd be surprised at how much people are just willing to talk to a completely new person. No one knows you, you don't know them, but they will say yes almost 100% of the time, just by reaching out. So take that extra step. And then as you learn and explore, I think through the exploration, it continued to define what my next step was. Okay, this is a nice direction. I want to go this way. Let me try this, and so for that, I would highly recommend just always seeking. And then that will help define, what your plan is.
Absolutely. Networking and LinkedIn, two of the most important tools that you can take advantage of when it comes to your career. I think that goes for anybody, but especially for CRAs. And especially during this time and day and age.
Yes.
Two very key tools and components. And so, once you did, your monitoring, your CRA, once you kind of, dominated that space, how did you decide your next move, and then kind of discuss and share with us, what exactly your next move entailed and how your career progressed?
Yeah. So, I would say that trial management was it for me. I wanted to really get into that space, take on sort of that leadership type of role and grow in that leadership role. How do you get into that space? Because from a CRA role to a trial managing role, it's quite a big jump, right? Mm-hmm. I tried to sort of highlight the experience and the knowledge gained through my master's education, as well as coupling that with the CRA experience. And that allowed for me to make a nice bridge into medical devices, which was not necessarily planned for me. With all the planning that I have been doing, that was different. And I took that on as an opportunity. It was a new space. I wasn't aware of clinical research in the medical device industry at the time, and thought, it's allowing me the opportunity to get into a clinical trial manager role. I will take it and see what this is about. And perhaps this can be my stepping stone into getting into pharma, which has been ultimately my passion and interest. And what was nice about this bridge is, as I was sort of channeling myself through the medical device arena, the role that I was in allowed me to play sort of a dual role. So where I was able to execute my trial managing skill set, with the projects that have been assigned to me, but I was also able to maintain my CRA skill set within that role. So therefore, being able to support and help monitor other trials. So then I was able to not only see CRA work through the pharma space with the CRO, when being in the CRO space, but then also see the CRAing in a medical device arena, which is a little different, and nice to expand that.
Nice. And one thing I did want to highlight is the fact that you said you kind of took on an unexpected role that ended up being a good opportunity or bridge. Because I get so many people, they have, like, you have a plan and you have a strategy, right? But you have to be flexible with that plan, and recognize opportunities when they come, right? Because even though med device wasn't kind of like your expectation, you still took it, the opportunity, and made the most of it. And I get so many people that I've even had clients that have these wonderful opportunities, but because it's, let's say, for example, $3, $4 short per hour of what they expected, they decline. And I'm like,
Yes, I mean, I will tell you, I think a successful career is one that you sort of move around, and bob and weave. And I feel like that actually gets you even further along. Your
yes,
immediate sort of time frame, you might feel stagnant, but the long-term benefit will come to you
yes,
sooner than you probably realize when you reflect back.
yes,
And so, I mean, I have taken on positions where I had very lucrative, and then just sort of dropped that down to sort of an internship salary, and then even further down in order to bring myself back up.
yes, yes. Thank you so much for saying that. It might, on the surface, anyways, appear to be a step back, but in reality, it's definitely still a step towards your long-term goals, anyways. Um,
Correct.
so I appreciate you so much for saying that. So as a trial lead, was it everything that you thought it would be? Discuss some of the challenges you faced with that, and then what now is your next kind of goal, or the next level that you plan to reach?
Yeah, no, thank you. So I would say that I learned a lot more than I would have realized, because you get hands-on experience. For the trial management role that I took on in medical devices, as you know, the way that studies are conducted are very different in medical devices versus pharma. And so the scope is different, and the magnitude of it is different. And so with medical devices, you get to get your hands on a lot more than what you would do in a big pharma, where there's expertise divided amongst multiple functions, right? So what I really enjoyed is being able to see all the different roles. So I did a little bit of regulatory, a little bit of data management, a little bit of writing the CSR, et cetera. So from A to Z, you get to see that. You get to be part of developing a CRF potentially with your data manager, as opposed to, you wouldn't necessarily get that degree of exposure should you be on the big pharma side. So there's some benefits for the scope that you take on. I would say that once I was able to move into the pharma space, it was a lot more global. So I went from sort of acting locally, thinking globally, a lot more expansive, and being able to have to work in a very highly matrixed environment, and learning to take a project and take it onto a different level of magnitude and scope.
Nice, nice. Um, so what next? Where do you see yourself going next? Do you have your eyes on another role specifically, or are you kind of just taking your career as it goes, just naturally?
I've been in the industry for 20 plus years now, right? And so I've had the opportunity to start in the CRA world, move into trial managing, from a medical device to a pharma place. I've been in the late stage development, trial leading. I thought, hey, I've conquered this for a few years. Let me get into the early development side. Did that. And I've moved currently into this sort of functional management, organizational management role. And from this point, I want to, it's more about expanding your leadership skill set. I don't want to actually pigeonhole myself into a role, because I feel the next role in terms of leadership, needs to be a bit more open. And I think leadership skill set and sort of the how skill set will help you drive any team or any project or process improvement at a larger and grander scale. So up until this point, I have been very focused on project work. And then this current role is certainly people focused. Right now I'm leading a team of 20 up to 25 folks. And I would say now it's maybe thinking about process improvement or merging the project and the people aspects into one role. I've been very deliberate about not taking on the people piece in clinical research up until this point, because I felt like I wanted to learn and be better and understand before I can help others. And so now it's maybe the opportunity to merge the two and finding a role within clinical research that can allow me to do that.
Awesome. That's amazing. And I too have thought about, I've avoided the people aspect, and I've thought about moving into trial lead management, but then I got into this coaching space. And trying to, help navigate the careers for aspiring CRAs. And I love it. And I like the fact that you mentioned all these different areas and roles and opportunities that are available, because I always try to stress this to all of my clients. Really being a CRA is like you said it best, it's the gateway to everything else. Mm-hmm. And then the sky's the limit, right? You can essentially go and do whatever you want to do. It's up to you in terms of what opportunities you take advantage of and how you drive your career. And that's exactly what you've done. And it's, wow, amazing.
And I will say, CRA wasn't my first role in the pharma industry, right? So I worked my way to that type of career to be focused in on clinical research. I started off in the manufacturing side and then also went to the labs before I actually even got into clinical research. So, just being able to see different facets in the industry, like I said, you can move around. You just need the opportunity and create the space.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned that. You brought that up, the roles prior to being a CRA, because I too started in the lab doing bench science. And a lot of people feel like they can go straight out of college, or, they've been a study coordinator for a few months, or, any CTA or what have you for a couple of months. And they feel like, I have the degree, I have a couple of months. What's the problem? Why won't anybody hire me?
Yes.
But it's so much more complicated than you can even begin to imagine unless you have the job, right? You try to explain it to people, but it's whatever we say it's never going to be quite justice for what you actually have to do until you do it and see it and experience it for yourself.
It's a very different environment. If the lab space is different, the manufacturing space is different, the individuals, the teams, the culture, it all demands a different side of you in each aspect, right? Yes. And so you would think preclinical to clinical bridge, very easy, but not so much, because you're so focused in on the lab work that you're doing, whereas clinical research, you're in a fast-paced environment. It is highly operational. To me, I feel that clinical research equals change. Yeah. Period. You are always on a daily basis dealing with the unknown. You become an expert of putting out fires, because that's 80%, 90% of your job ends up being that. And there's no two study that's ever been conducted the same, ever. And you can find that exciting and exhilarating and want to stay within that space, or perhaps maybe not so much. And you don't see that type of change within preclinical as you do in clinical. So you really do need to tap into different aspects of your how skill set as you make these transitions across the industry.
Absolutely. And I'll add, the language is totally different from preclinical to clinical, right? It's like a whole nother language. I remember the acronyms alone is like a course in and of itself. And then within each company, of course, they want to create their own little subset of acronyms. So it's like a completely new language, and just getting your brain wrapped around the language and those new concepts, like you said, within, of course, it's still basic from a basic science perspective. It's still, the basic concepts of how to conduct an experiment and having controls and placebos and, all that stuff. But like you said, from an operational standpoint, a logistics standpoint, it's totally different.
Yeah, and how the business works, right, in these spaces,
Absolutely.
and how you prioritize, and how do you make decisions. Very different in terms of
Absolutely.
what matters most within each space. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So what would you say for those aspiring CRAs out there that um, they feel like most people I encountered, they've almost given up. I myself at one time had given up. I don't know about you, but I felt like it would never happen at one point. Like I had tried everything. There's no way I'm going to be a CRA. But what would you say to those people that are, feeling like hopeless, essentially, like how or when or where will I ever be a CRA?
Yeah, I recently learned a really nice quote, and it's from Winston Churchill, and it's never, ever, ever give up. And truly, if you can embed that into your daily mantra, in terms of your search and as you seek, you will eventually get to the space you want to be. Be open, be ready to take on assignments that you weren't ready for. Perhaps you might need to take on a role that is not the CRA role, in order to build yourself up to the CRA role. So there are roles, titles are different across multiple industries, right? So there's roles sort of similar to a clinical trial associate role, or maybe an in-house CRA role. These roles that are sort of a supportive function to a CRA, or the central team. And either way, if you can get into the central team space or in sort of the CRA world, either way, you can find yourself to make that bridge. Once you get into an opportunity, you can find opportunities to stretch yourself, find opportunities to develop. You can work with your, the company and the manager and so on and so forth. But never give up. Keep talking, keep networking. I cannot stress it enough. And if those who are early in their career, I would say if you spend time at least one day a week to meet one person new, you will be absolutely investing your time in the right direction, because you'll create a network, perhaps a tribe, and you will take that with you. And if early in your career and you keep building it along the way, that will truly benefit you, because once you grow into your career, wherever that may take you, you will always want your options. You may go back to someone or a different space, or different role. And you might have been a CTA, you got into a CRA role, and then you're sort of doing trial managing, but you get the opportunity to be a leader of the CTAs. So you never know where you can sort of bring back what you are connected with in terms of people or knowledge.
Absolutely, 100% agree. Um, wow, you have shared so much, and I really hope that people kind of hone in into some of the at least for me, the points that stood out to me, and maybe it's just because I've kind of implemented them on my own. But really honing in on the fact that you had a plan, a strategy. You took advantage of every opportunity, regardless of how small it may seem at the time, and really staying focused and going after what you wanted. So, any last final words that you would leave to the aspiring CRA, the struggling CRA, or even the CRA who I get CRAs that people that have monitored before, but for whatever reason, their career is stagnant and they seem to have lost their job and then they can't seem to get back on, with another company. So any last words for these people, the aspiring CRAs and the struggling CRAs?
Stay committed, stay focused, stay motivated. It eventually manifests. And just know that you're not alone. We have all gone through it, and we go through it with each and every role. It's not something truly that is handed, and you have to work towards creating it. So I would just say that, I respect the energy and time and investment you put in. It'll be a high return on your investment if you put in the time and energy.
Thank you so much, Jasmine, for sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. I did not feel good about that.
What?
I didn't think I did good.
You did great. You shared so much.
I hope so. I hope the editing works better, but I felt
No,
like
you
there's
shared so much, and I say this, but then I'm the same way. I'm like kind of telling you don't worry about it, but then I have my own coach who tells me not to worry about it. But you did, honestly, you shared so much and you did so great. And the best part is you share from the heart. And it
I
and
did.
and it came out very genuine, and I mean you looked beautiful, and I at least I got something out of it.
I hope so. You know what I'll tell you, Jasmine? I think what was hard for me, and this is the honest truth, is that I love the industry. I love, the role. I love the journey from CRA. And to me, foundationally, that was key. But I haven't been in that space for so long, right? And so I've been in so many roles since then that how can I provide value to someone who's entering? And I can only give what I experienced, but that was like 20 years ago, right? The industry's changed so incredibly So could I speak on, sort of to the here and now and sort of, trial managing or being functional managing or organizational? Yeah, absolutely. Like left and right. Coaching, 100%. I know that's functional managing, right? That's what you're doing. But that comes easier and more recent. I have to pull myself into the CRA space, and I feel like I want to add value, but I feel like the value is forward focusing for them. Is that should you want to move forward, I feel like that's where my value is, perhaps, is providing that insights.
I can get that. I can get that. But honestly, your entire story is valuable. Regardless of the industry does change, like you said, even on a yearly basis, it's always
Yes.
evolving, it's always changing. But the fact of the challenges that people are facing to get in the industry, it's remaining consistent throughout across the board. Um,
Okay.
and even now today, it's even harder, honestly. It's getting worse and worse. And I don't know if it's because the regulations of the industry are becoming more strict, or if the sponsors' requirements are becoming more strict. I can't really pinpoint exactly what it is, but it's becoming so hard because even people that I feel are truly qualified, more than qualified, they aren't even getting like a second look.
So that's interesting that you say that. And I will say that I do think that the industry is becoming, the requirements of FDA are becoming a lot more complex. So the sponsor company needs to create and design a study that is becoming more complex. The technology is trying to keep up with that, and keeping up with the technology is getting more complex. So the time to sort of train, like I feel like the comfort of getting folks with experience is helping, because we're still kept to keep on shortening timelines, that pressure, keep the high quality in place, and it's putting a little strain on the whole system. And then to your point, it comes down to talent recruitment at the end.
Yeah. And that makes sense. But of course, if you're a candidate, it's frustrating, right? Because you don't.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, I don't know if are these folks getting into sort of the company space directly in? Have they thought about, like consulting, through these contracting roles, and it's even hard from that
It
perspective.
is. It is. So I've gotten a little bit mixture of both, which the contracts role now are honestly like, unless it's like a W-2 contract, even those are hard now to kind of get into. Even if it's like a 3 month, they want you to have like this insane amount of experience.
Oh, wow.
And it's like a catch-22. It's like, what can I do if I don't have experience, right? But you
Yeah.
want me to get it. Even the entry level roles, for example, a lot of them advertise that they want you to have, some of them say 2 years experience. as a monitor. And that's for entry level. But of course, it's like if it's entry level, you're not going to
What
have
is it entry? I almost feel like now what was able to be done in terms of entry to CRA is now entry into CTA or these other roles.
I
I
agree.
think that's the new start of
It is.
the career.
It is. And the downside with that is income. So I have clients that say they're willing to take those roles, but then when they get the offer and they see the salary and the, the package, they're like, well, I can't take this pay cut or I can't, afford to do this. And it's really almost like you do this or you do nothing. And it's not forever, right? It's temporary.
Right.
So I always try to encourage people and motivate them to say, hey, like this is how you get in the door. And the long-term gains are definitely worth this temporary salary or income or whatever. If you can afford to take the hit, of course. I'm not a financial advisor. But it's so
on a site level, like can you get into entry through the site perspective, right? Through the coordinating roles.
Yeah. And I have people that try to take that route too. But even then, a lot of the entry level roles, they just don't want to pay a lot. They don't. But like you said, sometimes you might have to take the non-paid opportunities, which is what my very, very first role was, volunteering at a site for a non-paid internship. And again, I'm not a financial advisor, so I don't advise anybody to get in debt. But if you're trying to truly get in the industry, you have to figure out a way to make that work.
You have to get on the channel. You have to get into the flow of it, and just for a short period of time.
Yeah.
And to your point, make a plan to make sure you allow yourself that opportunity. So
you really do. You have to, like you said, you have to stay focused on the long-term vision and where you're going long-term. That really is key. At least it was for me.
Yeah. Yep. Agree.